All right, welcome back. It's been a hot minute to Seattle Sports Secrets. Once again, I'm Ryan Hanna with Tristan Pratt in person this time.
Yeah,
This is a nice little setup I've got going here, but a lot of things to talk about in the Seattle sports world. A lot of interesting stuff, good, bad, and cool. I think this time around. So. Kind of, what do you want to start with first?
Figures we take a month off, and it's the busiest month of the week
Yeah.
we've had in terms of Seattle sports news, right? But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff to talk about today. We've got, it's gonna be a doozy. So strap in and let's get into it.
Yeah. So, first off, I think a couple of cool things that have happened. Seattle was elected to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. For all you soccer fans out there, I'm not a huge soccer fan myself, but even I know that this is a really cool event. It's like the most watched event in the world. And
Outside of like the Olympics, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean. And I know they've been campaigning for this for at least a couple years or however long, like the election process takes. But it's very cool that Seattle finally landed it, and I think all those years of campaigning, like it paid off, and it's going to be quite something to see the World Cup come here.
It's kind of a theme. Like, we basically get what we want by just campaigning the absolute crap out of it. I mean, that's how we got the Kraken, for heck's sake. So,
for sure.
But yeah, obviously, FIFA, one of the biggest soccer cups in the world, and I'm pretty sure they started campaigning the moment the U.S. was chosen to host the 2026 World Cup. So the fact that we get to host it and actually get to see like games only a couple hours away from where we are right now, that's pretty cool, and it's not something that happens very often.
It's really rare, and to have it in our little corner of the country is really unique, and good for the people who organized it and all the campaigning, like their work paying off right here. And
now, if only the biggest campaign could succeed.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, but it's nice to see such a big event come to Seattle, which kind of seems like Seattle is the perfect city when you think about it. Like, it's a big soccer town, and the Sounders are just like we've talked about on here before, like just one of the premier sports organizations, really, and so to have such a global phenomenon here in our little corner of the country is really a great thing, I think.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's not a secret that Seattle is by far the biggest city in the Northwest. Like, the next biggest city probably on the West Coast, they're all in California. Like San Francisco and LA, I think, are the only other two that really compare.
Right. Yeah.
Because I don't think...
At least in terms of size and population.
And all that stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Seattle has grown so much over the past 20 years now. Like, it's really deserved, and I'm really excited to see Lumen Field packed with fans, not just from the Sounders and from the area, but from all across the globe.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll definitely be a unique thing, is like how the World Cup brings like really the entire world all together, and to see that diversity in Seattle, like you mentioned at Lumen Field, like that's really going to be something.
And Seattle can handle it too, because Seattle's always been a super diverse city.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for it, and hopefully the U.S. team gets a few wins when they play in Lumen Field.
Oh, for sure. So that's kind of the first big news that we've got on the docket today. Some cool soccer news. But moving on to the next sport here, and this is another icon of Seattle sports, and really one of the best athletes the Pacific Northwest has ever seen, and surely up there all time with some of the greats, even with some of the NBA regular NBA greats. Sue Bird, the Seattle Storm superstar, has called it a career. She is hanging up the shoes after this season. ESPN broke that news a few days ago, I think. Is it by now? A few days, a week ago, something like that.
Like 5 days ago, I think. Yeah. Something like that.
So big news there. Obviously, she has had one heck of a career. I heard that she won something like a championship at every level of basketball that she ever played. From her youth teams that were championship caliber to all the way up to the NBA. Like, she won in high school, she won in college, she won in the NBA, and like
WNBA. Not NBA. Just to make sure we're perfectly clear there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But yeah, I mean, to see such a winning, not just like the Storm, in the 4 straight titles or whatever, but a singular winning player is unique, and you don't see that very often. And I think it's cool that she's here. She's from New York originally, but like that she played and dedicated her career to Seattle, I think is fantastic, and she's definitely an icon here, and for me, I think the only question is, when's the statue coming?
When's the statue? When's the Hall of Fame ceremony? Like, there's no question about it. Sue Bird is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in the WNBA, and I know a lot of people like to crap on the WNBA for all of these things, but my counter argument to those people is Sue Bird's the reason you're able to do that. She basically put the WNBA on the map. I mean, every sport has its greats. Like, the NFL has Tom Brady, the NBA has Michael Jordan, baseball has Babe Ruth, and other stars that have kind of challenged that throne. But for the most part, it's been Babe Ruth. The WNBA, that's Sue Bird. And she's been so vocal in the community. I mean, everyone may not know about the WNBA, but everyone here knows Sue Bird. Everyone does.
Especially here in the Pacific Northwest. Like, that's the impact she's had on our region, and I think that's just, honestly, like you said, like that is Hall of Fame worthy, to have that kind of impact, not only on a sport, or not only on a region, but an entire sport, and to kind of put the WNBA on her back, like you said, and single-handedly put it on the map is truly just a transcendent ability and talent and personality. So
yeah,
fantastic career
Here's a quick little stat for you. During her 561 games in her entire career, she has averaged 11, almost 12 points per game, with 2.5 rebounds and 5.6 assists. For a career as a WNBA player, that's really freaking good. Okay?
Well, yeah, Hall of Fame at least.
And that's considering she's been in the league for 20 years. Like, this is her 20th season.
Yeah.
This year, which to keep up that kind of pace
it's truly remarkable.
It really is. And while I know like other NBA players have done it better, but as far as Seattle legends go, she's up there with guys like Downtown Fred Brown and Jack Sikma and Gary Payton and Kemp and Lenny Wilkins
and Griffey and Edgar, and I mean
Griffey, Edgar,
Marshawn, the Legion of Boom. Like, I mean, she should be up there with the best of the best here in Seattle, and the best of the best in the WNBA.
She really should, because she cemented herself like that.
So yeah, hats off to Sue Bird. Congratulations on retirement. I mean, just what a phenomenal career.
Phenomenal career, phenomenal player, phenomenal person. We're gonna miss seeing number 10 on the court, but
absolutely. So last time we met, we were at the end of the Kraken season, and their season has wrapped for about a month now. So about the time that we've been away, so some time to stew on it. Kind of, what are your reflections on the inaugural season before we kind of get into the future here?
Well, I mean, it's a start, and honestly, that's the best you can ask for out of an expansion team like the Kraken are right now, because I think Vegas gave everyone expectations that were way higher than they should have been, because Vegas was an extreme anomaly. And
I agree with that.
I think we've gotten kind of the smack back down to reality of, this actually doesn't happen on a regular basis. Right. So, and again, there's a start, and there's some promising pieces. Like, there's Matty Beniers, obviously. Grubauer had a down year. I think he can rebound. The Drieger injury hurts as far as going in that. Sure. But you'll get Tanev coming back. McCann's still there. Yanni Gord is still there. Jordan Eberle is still there. You have some pieces to at least be mediocre next year.
Yeah, so, I think that's I think the floor is at least an improvement on this year.
Granted, that's not saying much, but
correct, yeah. So, but I definitely think they'll be better. But as we kind of turn to the future here, the draft is coming up in a few weeks
now.
Yeah, a few weeks. So around the same time as the MLB draft, which is an whole other topic. But they've landed in the draft lottery. The Kraken landed the number 4 pick, which I think was kind of unlucky, but they're still getting an elite talent, so I'm happy with it. But
there's all kinds of elite players that have been picked at number 4 overall. Mitch Marner from the Maple Leafs, Mikhail Makar from the now Western Conference champion Avalanche, Ron Francis. I mean, number 4 is not a bad spot to pick. I would have loved a top 3 pick, not going to lie, but see it as retribution from jumping up a spot last year.
Fair enough. So, lots of good prospects, I think, this year. What direction do you see them taking up? Because if I was the Kraken right now, I think I'd go defense, or I'd go offensive player with defensive capabilities. What do you think?
I kind of agree. I think if someone like a Logan Cooley falls to them, or God help us all, Shane Wright falls to 4, I think Seattle should absolutely pounce on that. But the main guy I've seen mocked to the Kraken a lot is Simon Nemec. And he was a guy, before even we knew what the lottery picks were going to shake out to be, he was a guy that was already getting mocked around in Kraken drafts. And Nemec, he's a defenseman. He's really good out of Slovakia. I've seen some of his tape. He can hit pretty well. He knows how to score and shoot the puck, which is something we kind of need right now.
A lot. Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I think Nemec is the pick if guys like Cooley and Shane Wright don't fall out of the top 3.
Which, to be completely honest, I don't think they will. I'd be really happy with Nemec as well. Like that's a really good player. I mean, pretty much no matter what, you're getting, if you're the Kraken, you're getting a really, really good player. So, and and to add that in with an already strong entry draft from last year, like I think they're starting to at least build at minimum you're building a long-term future. At best, I think these guys can start bubbling up and helping kind of keep drawing interest in the team as a lot of the other pieces struggle. And so these talents, like that's how you keep getting people back and drawing interest in the team, and ultimately being competitive. So I think there's a good start there, and you're getting a great talent, which will help kind of build the base and keep people interested. So
yeah, we've already seen what Beniers can do.
Yeah,
and there's a lot more where he came from that draft.
Yeah, a full season of Matty Beniers is really gonna get the hockey juices flowing. So I can't wait for that.
Especially with what is happening with the Seahawks right now. We'll get to it.
But. Yeah. So I don't know about you, but I kind of want to go into get it over with, get the ugly out of the way here.
Let's talk Mariners and how this team always disappoints us when we need it the most.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're watching this right now, you probably have a good idea of what's going on inside T-Mobile Park. Mariners 29-39, 10 games under 500, been shut out 4 times on a 9-game homestand, lost 4 of 5 to the Angels, who have been 2-18 before coming into the series. Lots and lots of problems. What are you seeing? Because I have a laundry list of things that I'm seeing with this team. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing underperforming. And again, I think we were expecting at least a little bit of regression from some pieces, but I don't think anybody could have predicted we were going to, be as bad as we are right now. Like, on paper, this team should be better than it is. I think we can all agree on that. This team should be playing far better than what they should be right now. And regardless of whose fault it is, mainly it's down to the players. It's down to the players performing. Jesse Winker has not performed up to expectations. Adam Frazier has been iffy at best. Eugenio Suarez has been solid, but if he's the best guy to come out of the major moves this offseason, then yikes. And beyond that, the rest of the roster is pretty much the same. I mean, obviously J-Rod has come up and made a massive splash. I really like what I've seen from Julio. Ty France has taken a massive step forward and he's by pretty much an all-star.
Yeah, pretty much a lock for the all-star game at this point.
Possibly even a starter over Vladimir Guerrero. I know the first all-star votes came in with Vladdy in the lead for first, but don't be surprised if Ty France takes that spot because he has been by far and away the best part of this team.
Yeah, and I agree with you to some extent. Like, it's that we didn't see them being this bad, but I think that a lot of it is just kind of all of the worst case scenarios you could think of kind of manifesting itself, whether that's, a poor roster construction, it's a terrible job of lineup construction and in-game decisions by Scott Service, which is a whole other thing. It's players like Winker underperforming, like
players getting injured.
Injuries, yep, that's injuries. Haniger, Murphy, Lewis. I mean, it's pretty much like every worst case scenario you can think of for the Mariners coming into this season has happened. So, to be completely honest, I think it can't really get any worse than this season. And to be quite frank, I think this is a lost season. But that said, I want to address some things. One, it really is time to move on from Scott Service. And I'm going to touch on this right now. The decision, watching this team every day and seeing the lineups that they put out, they don't have a stable lineup that they can run out reliably. And I think that's part of the problem. And that is on Scott Service. I mean, say what you will about how DePoto has constructed the roster. But the fact that they don't have a consistent lineup that they're running out every single day is absolutely on Scott Service. And you see, like pinch hitting Abraham Toro for Taylor Trammell, or like some of the in-game strategy is just like dropped off a hill from last year when Scott kind of rallied the troops and took this team to the crazy season that we had. Like, it's been the complete opposite. There's been no consistency. There's been guys who are hitting well sitting on the bench, and guys who can't hit or aren't hitting well or can't hit, like, getting critical, huge ABs. Like, they're just the game strategy and the lineups, and I think it's time for Scott Service. Like, we need to move on from Scott Service. And I know you and I have talked about his relationship with Jerry and kind of what that means for the organization, but I think that Dipoto and Service are mutually exclusive in that they're independent from each other, and they're not as tied to the hip as they once were. I mean, you look at like 3-4 years ago when you're with a roster of like Nelson Cruz, Robinson Cano, James Paxton, James Pazos, Gene Segura, all these guys pre-rebuild, then I think you can make a case of like, if Jerry goes, then Scott's got to go. But now, even with the roster that Dipoto has built, like, Scott Service is finding ways to amplify the flaws of this roster and make them glaringly. And I at this point, like, I tried to put up with it as much as I could, and I tried to defend Dipoto or Service. I mean, sorry, I tried to defend Service, but honestly, the Trout home run in the first game of the doubleheader is what did it for me, because you had an opportunity. There was a base open. You had your best pitcher on the mound, and you had Shohei Ohtani, who, yes, was last year's MVP. But again, he's not the same guy this year as he was last year. And, like, you can get him out now. Like he's definitely not hitting as well as he was last year. So, and the fact that you have a big power arm on the mound in Diego Castillo, there's absolutely no reason they should pitch to Mike Trout in that situation, and yet Service allows him to go out there and throw a sinker, which wasn't even a bad pitch, but Mike Trout is the best freaking low ball hitter in the game. And so you have a known sinker ball pitcher on the mound, power sinker to a low ball hitter like Mike Trout, and it's just a recipe for disaster. It's just like these game decisions time and time and time again that I think it's time to go. It's time to move on from Service.
I kind of disagree with that, because while I will not deny that some of his decisions have been extremely baffling, I will not bother trying to deny that. And I know M's Twitter is all up in arms about firing Service and Dipoto, but there are a couple reasons why I don't think it's time to move on from Service yet. The first one being, you're moving on from more than just a manager if you get rid of Service, right? You basically have this entire culture that Service has helped make, and if you take somebody like Service out of that, you basically have to create a new culture from scratch. And right now you don't have the leadership pieces to do that. So it's basically restarting from scratch. And while, yes, this is a step back as far as the rebuild goes, we can afford, a year back so we can take another bigger leap forward, right? This has been kind of the trap the M's have caught themselves in for the last 20 years, is that we've never really had consistency, and we've been as reactionary when I don't think we've had to. Now, and it's not the premise of firing Service, because again, his lineups are at least a little defensible, because that's not all Service. There are other people behind the scenes that make those lineups before Service gives them the final say. And yes, he does have the final say, but he's not the one actively constructing the lineups. That's other people in the front office. That's not necessarily on Service. And while I get the in-game decisions are a little less to be desired, But at the
A
same
little bit.
But at the same time, say we do fire Service. Who's replacing him? You really trust Manny Acta or Christopher Negron to manage this team for the rest of the year? Do you really want a guy like Joe Girardi or Joe Madden to manage this team? I wouldn't. Not considering how Girardi was in Philadelphia, and definitely not Madden.
Well, I think part of that is, look, clearly it's not their year. And so, I don't want to say this, but I hesitate to say this because there's also still a long-term future, but I kind of think this year doesn't matter as much anymore now that we know, like, there's really no shot that this team turns it around, even though they keep saying it. So I don't think it matters necessarily who you bring in after Service, at least for this year. Then obviously you talk about next year and the conversation changes. But the most important thing is being able to capably handle baseball decisions while being able to capably manage the roster, which, from a baseball perspective, I don't think Joe Girardi was the problem in Philadelphia. I think he's at least worth a look. I'm not sure if that means he's the long-term answer, but I think because there are a lot of other problems going on in Philadelphia and Anaheim as well. I don't necessarily think that Joe Girardi was as much of a problem for the Phillies as Scott Service is for the Mariners, because really when you look at it, like Service's lack of consistency is what's killing it. And to go back to what you said about like the culture, I don't think it would be tearing it down completely, because I mean you still got a tight group of guys that, like, going through this kind of year will make them stronger and make them like bond together more. And really, I think what it boils down to, like, if you fire Service, and I heard this, I forget where I heard this, if I heard it on Twitter or the internet or somewhere on the radio, somewhere. But I heard that someone said that firing Service would be sort of like a wake-up call of like, oh crap, like things are getting real here. Which I absolutely think the players need. I mean, you talk about the players underperforming, like firing Service would kind of do that, and they'd be like, "Oh crap, okay, like things are getting real here." So, not only from the baseball managerial decision making side of things, but from the culture building and clubhouse perspective, firing Service could be the kind of like the kick in the gut that this team needs to like go on a good stretch here and show us, because this season is kind of lost. This season is definitely lost at this point. But just like go on a run and show us that core that's still there, that Dipoto has brought in over the course of this rebuild. Show us the potential of this core, start going on a run, and then like I still think, like, I know you say every next year's the year or whatever, maybe next year, but as Mariner fans, like, I get being sick of that, but at the same time, I think it with this core, it's different because the ceiling is so much higher and the floor is so much higher. And I think that Jerry Dipoto sees that and knows that. And I think that when the time is right, when the time is right, which I think it will be after this season, they will address the roster and fix it and make it better and more sustainable, so that we're not seeing Abraham Toro in the 7th inning batting right-handed against a nasty left-handed reliever with runners at second and third and 2 outs. So, I mean,
the depth on this team definitely needs upgrading. Like,
yes.
When Dylan Moore is an everyday starter, that's a problem. I don't think.
To be fair to,
I mean, Dylan has been hitting better recently,
but the bar is pretty low.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The bar is fairly low, and again, it's the depth on this team that kills it. And again, as far as firing service goes, I think I'm just more attuned to the long term than I am to the short term. But I think firing service would kind of have the same effect as, I don't know, would it have the same effect as trading Kendall Graveman did last year? Because, I mean, you heard the outcry from the players after that move. They were mad. They were pissed.
I think that's different, and that's different because that team was in contention. Like, they were hovering around 500. They were like 3.5 games back of the wild card at this point. At that point, and so like they were understandably heated trading your best reliever. But this team is not anywhere close to contention this year. Like, they're 10 games under, they're 8 back of the wild card. Like, it would take 3 miracles and then some for them to turn it around this season. And even then, like, it's a stretch to make the playoffs. But so I think that's why it's different, is because it's obvious that they're out of it. And so the players would take it more of a like kick in the gut, like, crap, like we need to get our crap together, as opposed to like last year trading Graveman is understandably heated because you're in the middle of a playoff race at the deadline, so I mean, in a year that you're clearly out of it, I think when it comes to a decision like this, I think the clubhouse factors a little bit less than a situation like Kendall Graveman.
Fair enough. And again, I don't think it's all on service. I think that's pretty unfair to put it all on service. Don't get me wrong, he's a massive, massive part of this, but he's not the only one. I mean, and you have to put some of it on Jerry. I mean,
I agree.
This depth is awful. He needs to do something about it, and he's kind of sitting there doing nothing. I get that. The players need to step up, but I think the main part of what all of this is on is ownership, because keep in mind, the other part of the whole service thing is he's under contract. They just signed him to a massive extension last year.
3 years,
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the other part of That's the other part. I mean, firing him just after an extension, like, that's part that I'm kind of wary about, but at the same time, like, you do need a better answer, and you're right about Jerry. Like, there are legitimate flaws in this plan. It's a good plan, like this rebuild that he's embarked on. He's definitely done a ton right, which I like to highlight, and I'm sure that we need to highlight during a time like this. But like, you're right, he also has, like, the cracks of the plan are definitely showing. So I think really it comes down to Jerry making better decisions, and it's not like they had a bad offseason. Look, they did exactly what they set out to do last winter. They getting Ray, Winker, Suarez, Frazier. Like, he did what he said he was going to do: add length to the lineup and acquire a top end starting pitcher. It's just that injuries and regression and pretty much injuries, regression combination has made the acquisitions underwhelming. But I think for Winker and Ray, respectively, I think they'll be fine over the long haul because now that Ray's got that sinker, that helps him out a lot more. And Winker,
he's looked a lot better as of late.
Yeah, and Winker's too good of a hitter to not bounce back now that he's kind of adjusted to AL pitching a bit. But I think long term those are good moves. He did what he said he was going to do, so I think I have trust in him that he's going to do whatever he sets out to do again next offseason.
Yeah, and some free agency signings just don't pan out.
Exactly.
It happens.
Yeah.
Like it happens to the best GMs. Like some GMs just have signings that just don't work out.
Yeah.
It happens. So
and that's the other part of free agency too, is like you can make a good offer on a player, but they just don't choose to come to your team. Like Trevor Story just chose Boston over Seattle for a number of reasons. But
remember when we were talking about Chris Bryant and how he could change this team?
Yeah, what a difference maker.
Thank you, Colorado, for being idiots.
Yeah. Hindsight 2020. But anyways, Trevor, from what I've heard, they offered Trevor Story the same deal that Boston gave him, and he just chose Boston. So I mean, yeah, you can try and blame free agency on him or ownership being cheap, and I'm sure that's true to some extent. But also, you have to realize it takes a considerable amount of selling to get a free agent to sign in Seattle, where they're flying more miles than almost any other team in baseball, and it's like the top corner, and it's just there's no track record of winning, and so it's a really hard destination to sell, especially when you've got this group of young, unproven talent that can, yes, in theory be good, but needs more time to prove it. But so a lot of stuff going on there, and I mean, we've seen some of that young talent take the step forward, but now it's time for them to actually follow through on building a good roster and getting a good manager in there to kind of help keep the culture there where it is, because I still think it's a good culture. It's just we need a change we need a fresh new set of eyes, at least from the managerial position. And
you want to know how I think we can get a spark without maybe firing Service, while still keep the culture intact, but it would also give the M's a spark? What about trading for Nelson Cruz? Call Washington, call the Nationals, see what they're asking for at least, because he's familiar with the system. He knows Service. He knows Dipoto. I'm pretty confident he'd like to come back. I mean, yeah, he's up there in age. He's 40 years old.
Yeah, but he's still producing.
He's still hitting.
Yeah,
and he's still a really good player. And you don't really have a DH right now, and
clearly
he's probably better than Upton at DH. So I say give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the rotate the DH role has not worked, as we've seen. But let me pose you this: what do you think? What would you give up for him? Because I mean, you're talking about in theory bringing Nelly back is a fantastic idea, and I would love him. But you're also bringing him back for half a season, so essentially 2 months worth. Given
I wouldn't give Washington much. Maybe a guy a fringe guy like Haggerty or Sheffield, since you don't want want to use him. Trade away a guy like Sheffield and maybe a low tier prospect.
All right.
I think that would be pretty fair for both sides, because Washington is a young team. They need a rebuild. They could use a prospect from our loaded farm system that we'd probably never use, and Sheffield can be good if he limits the walks. And
the slider's very good, but
he has the stuff. He just can't have the command.
He doesn't have the command, and that sinker looks like a meatball when he doesn't have the command. So I think that might get it done just because of the control they have on Sheffield and like someone like Haggerty. But then again, you're dealing from an already thin depth. But again, like I said earlier, like the season's kind of punted anyway. So, but yeah, so a lot of less than ideal stuff going on.
Another guy I'm really curious to see about if the M's play out is Kevin Padlow, who they called up from AAA. I don't know if he's going to get any time and in the box or in the field for the M's, but I'd pay attention for him because I saw him in AAA. He looks really good. Like, really, really good. And he may be a better depth piece than Dylan Moore or Abraham Toro. Who knows?
Certainly he could be better than
Abraham
he
definitely
Toro.
Came under the radar, and the last prospect that came under the radar that blossomed was Ty France.
Yeah.
So I say screw it, take a shot. The season's pretty much already done. Give Padlow some time and see how he does. Yeah,
I think that's interesting. But I guess I would counter with the fact that the AAA gap, the gap between AAA and the majors right now is arguably bigger than it's ever been before at any point in history. So, I mean, you get these like quad A players,
Darren McKagan,
yeah, like McCacken and like Sheffield, who goes down there and like he can look good at times in AAA, but then he comes back up and gets absolutely shelled in the majors because that gap is huge. So I think you're right. I think you bring up an interesting point in Padlow as like a guy to kind of keep an eye on, but at the same time, I'm not sure how much he'll contribute, and I doubt he'll be the next Ty France. So
I mean, I don't think he'll be like ridiculously good, but I mean, worst case scenario, he's better depth for you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, a lot of stuff going on at T-Mobile Park for the Mariners. So
let's just go across the street.
Yeah, go across the street. Early takeaway. What are some of your early takeaways from Seahawks OTAs?
It's kind of hard for me to get excited about the Seahawks because I have a disdain for Pete Carroll. Any of you who've watched this show previously know that, but I mean, the main takeaway I've seen, Ken Walker. Kid looks really good. and if he pans out, he really could be the greatest running back we've had since 24 was in town. And I do not take that lightly. I don't say that lightly. I think Ken Walker has the potential to be one of the best running backs in the league, up there with Henry and Taylor and Cook and Jones of the Packers and basically every good running back you can think of.
I think that's interesting that you bring that up because I remember on draft night, like there was a bunch of feedback, let's say, to taking Ken Walker when and where they did, but like once it kind of calmed down. Because I remember everybody freaked out that, you took a running back with your, fourth round pick or whatever?
Second round pick.
Second round, right.
It was the 41st overall pick.
That's right.
And yeah, people were mad about it, but I kind of said this on the initial draft breakdown we did. The more you look into the running back situation for the Seahawks, the more it makes sense. Because the only guy you have under control after this season is DJ Dallas. Penny's on a one-year deal. Carson's deal is expiring. God knows if you re-sign him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, considering his injury history. Penny is a wild card. You have Travis Homer. I mean, you basically have Travis Homer light and DJ Dallas, so I wouldn't really go with him. And then you have Alex Collins, who is getting up there in age. So I think drafting a running back will, while not the move everyone would have liked, and definitely not one I would have liked, I think it was the right move.
Yeah. So definitely one that it grows on you when you think about it more. But more interestingly, we got some news that looks like the Seahawks might be for sale and I think this will kind of wrap us up here as it transitions from potential sale of the Seahawks to like into the Sonics and just like franchise talk. So
we'll get into that. Don't worry. There's a bunch of rumors, but basically how the whole Seahawks sale is going, and this is the same kind of thing with the Trailblazers, and we'll get into that in a minute. But basically, Paul Allen said in, I think it was his will or some other last wish type thing, that he wants the team to be sold outside of his trust by a certain date. I think it was 2023, but I could be wrong. In any case, I think this is definitely what needs to happen for the Seahawks. I think Jody Allen, I still don't know what to think of her. I mean, she's about as hands-off as it gets, which sometimes works out, and sometimes it really, really doesn't. And while she's not Dan Snyder or anything, she's also not anything close to what her brother was. So yeah. I think a sale of the team could work wonders as far as potential candidates. I think you gotta look at Jeff Bezos. I mean,
for sure.
He stated that he's wanted to own a football team. He's been in talks to buy the Commanders. And the fact that Amazon is from Seattle, like everyone loves to mention, I think it makes all kinds of sense for Bezos to own the team. As far as owners go, I think he'd be pretty okay. I don't think he'd be the best, but I also don't think he'd be the next Ken Behring or Dan Snyder. So that's always a plus.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. I think it makes a ton of sense, and I think that would be really exciting to see such a well-known figure kind of take over a well-known franchise.
And at the same time, another guy I think you could look at is maybe Tim Lewicki. We'll get into him in a minute, but I mean, the Lewickis are clearly interested in buying some sports teams and putting them where they belong, and the Seahawks definitely belong in Seattle, so I could definitely see Tim Lewicki becoming an NFL owner.
Absolutely, and I think this changing of the guard as far as Seahawks owners, and so with that, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that why don't you? So for you, like I know you've looked into this more, but how would the changing of the guard as far as Seahawks owners go kind of impact Allen's holdings on the Trailblazers and any future like relocations here?
Well, obviously, if you're an owner, you do get a final say in relocation and whatnot. You obviously have to get approval to relocate anywhere if you are, but I don't think the Seahawks or the Blazers would. I mean, their fan bases are so diehard, and while there are definitely teams more on the downtrend, I just think they'd be dumb to move out. So, I've been wrong about this before, cough cough Russell Wilson, but at the same time, I think moving the Seahawks out of Seattle would be just ridiculous and stupid. I mean, Paul Allen literally bought the Seahawks to keep them in Seattle. So, and then as far as what it would do as far as on the field, Pete Carroll and John Schneider, their jobs would be in a lot more jeopardy because new owner probably wants to change everything and give this team the reboot it desperately needs right now. And that includes getting rid of Schneider and Carroll. And I don't know if getting rid of Schneider is the right move, but I definitely think getting rid of Carroll is. I know he brought us that Super Bowl all those years ago in 2013, but there comes a time when things have to end. He's the oldest coach, and for a team that's getting younger, I think it makes more sense for the team to get a new coach, new GM, ones that are more attuned with the game, strip it down, do the rebuild right.
Right, and I don't think there's any... I don't see the Seahawks moving at all. I really think they're just going to... they're going to stay in Seattle. But I was kind of wondering, because you were telling me on the way in, like, about how potentially if the Trailblazers, because you were saying, like, you were reading something about potentially the Trailblazers moving up and how that could affect maybe the Sonics coming back.
Well, we'll talk about this as kind of our segue into the Sonics talk, but there were rumors that the Trailblazers,
which is right now,
the moments, which the main thing about how the Sonics went around is that the Trailblazers being on sale, the question was, could the Trailblazers relocate to Seattle? And for a team that's kind of looking like the Seahawks were at the start of this NFL offseason, I mean, they have an unhappy superstar that they don't know what's going to happen with in Damian Lillard. They have a team that's not really that great, probably looking to get younger, don't have a desirable head coach, have an average at best GM. So I don't think the Blazers move. I don't. But if they do, I could see maybe St. Louis could get that team. I could see Louisville possibly getting a team, which sounds crazy, but I mean, they do have a pretty solid college fan base over there, and they are diehard over in Kentucky. And I think, who knows? I think a sports team in Kentucky would be cool. But Baltimore, there's so many other big markets too. Like Baltimore doesn't have a basketball team. Pittsburgh doesn't have a basketball team. Cincinnati doesn't have a basketball team. There are so many options to choose from. But I don't think it'll be either. If they do move, I don't think it'll be Seattle or Vegas because, segue, John Canzaro reported that the Seattle and Vegas have been earmarked for expansion in 2024 after the media rights deals for the NBA expires. Now, I'm going to preface this, what I'm about to say, by saying this is a rumor. Yes, I'm fully aware of that. We'll talk about the validity of that rumor. But also, we're going to... It's really hard. I know it's really hard to get excited about anything Sonics when we've been down this avenue like a few times now. I mean, we were down this avenue when the Kings were up for sale. We've been basically begging for the NBA to come back since 2008 when they moved. Yep. That being said, if the Russell Wilson situation has taught me anything, where there is smoke, there is fire. And Indeed. There has been a disgusting amount of smoke around this. Like, it's so much smoke, it makes the wildfires in Australia look like child's play. It's seriously ridiculous. Oh my gosh. And I'm dead serious. And there's so many aspects to this story. We could literally make an entire podcast about nothing but the Sonics and how it affects every single portion of the sports community, not just the NBA. And I'm going to make a few videos myself on this. So, YouTube.com, look up Tristan Pratt. It'll probably be my first thing if you want to check that out.
Shameless self-promotion.
Yes, shameless self-plug. I will give myself a shameless self-plug. But
yeah, I think
as far as the people just saying, oh, the Sonics don't deserve a team, or, oh, they had their chance, stop. They never should have left, okay? And look at it this way. Expanding into Seattle makes too much sense. It really does. I mean, you have the fan base, you have the ownership in Tim Leiweke, which we've already talked about a little bit, but the thing with Tim Leiweke, his brother Todd is the owner of the Kraken.
Yep.
And he helped build the Climate Pledge Arena, which brings me to the third point. They have the stadium. The biggest hurdle for the Sonics coming back was Key Arena sucked. It did.
Yeah.
It sucked.
And so now you already have a kind of lure for the NBA to come back. And I think it was interesting.
Their whole slogan was, if we build it, they'll come. We've built it. Yeah. Just saying.
People will come, right? People will come. But no, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, that it could impact more than just the NBA, like, because like you think about, you're right, like you move the NBA back to Seattle, you move some of these franchises around. What does it mean for Las Vegas? What does that in turn mean for the Oakland A's? who are in serious danger of getting relocated. Were you talking about, like, who knows, the Cincinnati Reds or the Baltimore Orioles are in a lawsuit right now. If they see another team,
Tampa Bay Rays.
the Rays are another one. Like you see a franchise expand or move, and it could very well be the trigger for a kind of ripple effect of different sports teams changing cities, all in the span of like 5-10 years.
Yeah, and again, I don't think we'd be talking about this right now without the Kraken and the Golden Knights being introduced into the NHL,
right.
Because they're the only reason Vegas has the Raiders. They're the only reason we're even talking about Vegas getting an expansion team for the NBA. And they've already started making plans for an NBA arena down in Vegas, like a specific NBA arena. So, and you could do the same thing for Seattle too. There's a dude who's bought a bunch of land in the Soto District, which, for those of you that don't know, the Soto District is basically where Lumen Field and T-Mobile Park are, home of the Seahawks and Mariners.
Soto.
Yeah, Soto District. It's basically a big industrial thing, but it also has Lumen Field and T-Mobile Park. So you'd basically put an NBA arena for the Sonics right next to your two oldest franchises. So you'd have all of your three oldest franchises in one spot, and then you'd have your fourth one as close to the Space Needle as physically possible. Like, it makes all sorts of sense. And the dude has already said he's buying it for when the Sonics come back. So that is a viable option. So you can crash on the couch of the Kraken for a few years, move into your own stadium, and all of a sudden, boom, problem solved for the next 20 or so years.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
again,
Vegas can speak for themselves, but, I mean, as far as Seattle goes, like you just talked about, like, all the pieces are here, all the draw is here. Pretty much all that needs to happen left is the NBA needs to sign off and say, all right, we're good.
The only thing left is for Adam Silver to pull the trigger, which, if he's watching this, I highly doubt he is, but if he's watching this, do it. Do it, please. Just give us our Sonics back. For the love of all that is holy.
Do it.
But as there's a couple-ish things with the timeline that I kind of want to bring up here. Because it says 2024, 2025. It's not really specific about whether that's an announcement in 2024 or if they're going to start play in 2024. But and I'll talk about both are viable, but I'll talk about which one is, I think, more likely and how it'll happen. I'll start with if they start play in 2024, 25, which, spoiler alert, I don't think is going to happen. I think I'll be stunned if we actually get it. Because if they were going to do it, they'd have to announce it pretty much within the next month. We're talking early August at the latest.
Yeah.
Like the bare latest.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why the 2024, 25 seems kind of unreasonable for starting of play. I mean, given all the pieces that Seattle has, I mean, but yeah, they'd have to announce it like tomorrow if they wanted to start in 2024.
I don't think it'd have to be tomorrow because, again, NBA franchises normally take about 2 years to get situated. I mean, we saw it with the Golden Knights. The Kraken aren't really a good example because, COVID happened, and that's not going to happen this time. At least it better not. But, yeah, I mean, the Sonics, I think announcing it in 2024 is more likely because then the rest of the league is like, oh, okay, we have like 4 years to prepare for this.
Exactly.
Because it takes a lot of time for the rest of the league too, because that's a whole other story we can get into another time.
Changing divisions and
changing conferences.
Conferences, yeah. So a lot more going on here. I agree with you that I think 2024 will be the announcement. If I had to take a stab at when they'll start play, and I've told you this before, I think 2027 is realistic.
2026, 2027 season.
Yeah, I think that's the realistic.
That's the goal.
If they move, if the NBA approves it, that is. But
I think they will. I don't think there's a reason not to because again, like Seattle, Vegas has pretty much all the intangibles too. They have a fan base. They have, I mean, there's been rumors swirling that LeBron James could own a Vegas expansion team for the NBA. So you have your ownership there. You have the arena thing situated and then some. And the city is clearly does not care about its future and wants all of the sports teams. So you don't really have much of a problem in Vegas. So again, I think it's not a matter of if but when at this point. But
yeah, I agree with that. I think I like what you said about Vegas. Like they clearly don't care and they want all the teams that they can get.
And again, Seattle makes just too much sense.
Yes, I mean Seattle's pretty much ready and then some. So
if they're gonna expand, you'd pretty much have to lock Seattle in as an expansion team,
right? And that would create your even 32 or 34.
You'd have to move a team from Western Conference to Eastern Conference, and that's a whole can of worms that I can talk about when I make my videos. But again, it just makes too much sense. I think, because again, if the Sonics were going to come back in 24, 25, they'd have to announce it.
I think
within the next month.
I think they'd already have announced it if they were coming back.
I don't think so because where the rumor came out, it was right when NBA playoffs were happening. So I think it was more likely that they were going to wait until after the NBA Finals was over. Congrats to the Warriors, by the way. But I think you give a moment to let the Warriors have their moment in the sun, and then late July, early August, announce your expansion team, give everybody the heads up, and let Seattle break the internet for a solid 24 hours.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that will do it for us today. It's covered a variety of topics throughout Seattle sports, kind of breaking down everything that is new and happening. So, once again, I'm Ryan Hanna. Thank you for listening. If you've made it this far with Tristan Pratt, you are listening to Seattle Sports Secrets. We will see you later. Hopefully, we'll get to do this again sometime.
Yeah, maybe not in person, but sometime soon.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.